Then, the dealer spent $250,000 to soup up the bike. They hired an engineer from NASA to tune the engine, and by the time it was done, Pridmore's race-ready R90S put out an amazing 100 horsepower.
As far as the power and the brakes and the handling at the time, they were adequate. You could always make things better, which we did.
By the mid-1970s, BMW motorcycles faced a serious challenge. They desperately needed a new design that would make their bikes more modern. In 1976, BMW found the answer with another technological first, a new bike called the R100RS, the first production motorcycle in the world that came straight from the factory with complete bodywork called a full fairing.
In 1976, BMW, the R100RS, was the first motorcycle that the fairing was tested in a wind channel. It was absolutely the first bike, and it was a motorcycle that tested in the wind tunnel for a long time to make this fairing perfect. If you have a look on it, there are a lot of details that have been absolutely new at this time.
The R100RS made its debut at the Cologne Motorcycle Show in 1976. It stunned the audience because its handlebars, switches, and instruments were all integrated into the new fairing.
It was a milestone in motorcycle history, so it was also a whole concept, a whole bike, and not a fairing and a motorcycle. It was a motorcycle with fairing.
A fairing where form followed function. Its shape determined in the same Italian wind tunnel that Ferrari used to shape its sports cars. However, despite all the advancements of the R100RS, by the end of the 1970s, BMW needed something exciting to put on display at the Frankfurt Motorcycle Show. Its answer was to combine a street bike and a dirt bike into a new type of motorcycle, the Enduro. BMW called the new bike the R80 GS.
The R80's launched the bike that will do anything. I mean, it'll do anything. It'll be a great commuter. It's fantastic on the pavement, great in the twisties, unbelievably good in the twisties, those adventure bikes.
The GS in the R80 GS name tag comes from the German Gelandestrasse, meaning road and street. You could ride the bike on anything from the Autobahn to a dirt farm road. Even though the first R80 GS was really just a collection of pieces from the factory parts bins, it had a remarkable success in one of the most challenging off-road races anywhere. The famous Paris-Dakar Rally, 6,068 miles across some of the toughest terrain in the world.
BMW went to the Paris-Dakar event at the beginning of the 80s and won it 4 times between 1981 and 1985. So you see, this was a perfect bike for on-road and off-road at this time.
It's got a great racing history, and what the R80 GS did was launch a whole bunch of people off the road into the dirt, up the deserted dirt highway that cuts over the mountain, and you can do that on a GS.
The GS was a stopgap model that surprised BMW with its sales success and started a whole new category of motorcycles called adventure bikes.
You could drive the thing across Africa, which so many people did. Great big huge gas tank, aggressive tires, lots of suspension, big wide handlebars, bulletproof reliability. That's a good package.
Larger, more powerful versions of the original R80 GS are still being sold. The latest version is called the R1200 GS. It has a bigger boxer engine with 100 horsepower. The GS is one of the most popular series of BMWs ever made. Total production topped 250,000 bikes by the end of 2007.
If I could only have one motorcycle at the moment, just one, as I now have three, it would be the R1200 GS, just because it's good for distance, it's good for dirt roads, and it's just fun to ride.
While the GS line surprised everyone, the real shock about to come out of BMW headquarters was a drastic change in both design and tradition. The classic boxer engine was about to be replaced with a four-cylinder motor nicknamed the Flying Brick.
Well, the Flying Brick, as they called it, that really was just a huge departure. It just seemed like, oh, here's the future of motorcycling.
In the early 1980s, BMW decided it needed a bike with more power than it could get from the classic two-cylinder air-cooled boxer engine. It decided to build a four-cylinder liquid-cooled engine, something the company had never done before.
What a shock. The world had grown up with opposed twins, air-cooled, and all of a sudden, here comes this rather industrial-looking liquid-cooled four-cylinder.
In 1983, BMW showed the world the K100, a motorcycle with a four-cylinder engine placed sideways in the frame. The K100 was more revolution than evolution, and the BMW faithful were frantic. They feared the new engine meant BMW would stop producing its classic boxer motor.
In 1983, exactly 60 years after the presentation of the R32, the presentation of the K100 was a little bit like a crime. We bring a new concept. People say BMW is boxer engine. Will the customer around the world, will they accept the K-Series as a real BMW motorcycle?
Time brought both praise and compromise. The K100 won Motorcycle of the Year awards around the world, and people began buying it. At the same time, BMW decided to keep its classic boxer engine in production. But it was the K-bike that took the lead in terms of innovation. It was the first BMW motorcycle to have a digital electronic system. Like BMW cars, it used fuel injection and had a catalytic converter to reduce pollution. But the biggest news from digital electronics was the first anti-lock brake system ever put on a bike. Simply called ABS, people had no idea if it would really work. And there was only one way to find out.
I was fortunate enough to be invited to the press launch of BMW's ABS K-Bike. They brought us over, they gave us a short introduction, they put us in our leathers, helmets, and they said, we would like you to take this bike down this runway, put the brakes on, and brake into this huge sand area. And we were basically going in there on faith. We knew we were going to fall down. We thought we'd try it. We went in there, and the ABS worked in the sand, stopped our bike without us falling down, and that was a huge breakthrough for motorcycling.
Like all BMW motorcycles, the K-Bike is built at the BMW factory in Berlin. From the outside, you'd never think the building dates all the way back to 1939.